Can you hear me, Miguel?
Great notes from
Yeah,
meeting.
okay. I cannot hear you, but that's fine. Good. I just had to switch the microphone. All right, here we go, guys. For those that are in the room, all right. So when a lot of times this is and I don't know if Miguel, you can see this. A lot of times when you're having issues with Zoom, it's because you don't have this audio connected right. Okay. Your microphone, because the system is recognizing there's a room microphone and there's a microphone on my computer, it's giving me a choice. And many people say, I can't hear anything, I can't say anything. You've got the wrong microphone selected, or you've got the wrong speaker selected. Okay. So it's when people do a recording and they're doing audio and they've got a microphone on their chest in YouTube, or they've got a mic and they sound like this, and because they've got the wrong mic. They think they're doing it in Zoom or somewhere else, and they're selecting the wrong microphone. And so that's why it doesn't sound good or whatever. So just so y'all know, so echo canceling speaker is what's in the here. Okay. Realtek is my computer. Yeelink, I have no idea what that is, but I'm using the microphone on the smart sound for the tech there. And so that's why Miguel can now hear me, is because I switched the microphone. And so now he can hear. Okay. All right. That one's free. Just so y'all know. All right, so there's the pet. Like I said, all I'm doing with this one is not going to go deep on each one of them. I'm just showing you what are the changes for 2025. Dwelling lease template, the Renters' Rights and Stabilization Act. The act provides a tenant with opportunity to purchase right refusal of the landlord wishes to sell the property. Okay, we'll go through more of that tomorrow. But now there's a right of first refusal for all of Maryland. Okay, right. The Maryland Mold Remediation Act, effective July 1, requires a landlord to provide a tenant with an informational pamphlet regarding mold risk and prevention. Okay. So again, we're getting more things the landlord needs to do. Now, most of our business, which was 140 transactions last year in Maryland, which includes rentals, most of it was buyers. So we don't do a lot of listing, but these are the things as a buyer and tenant agent that you're looking for. EPA now has a brief guide to mold moisture in your home pamphlet. They have to give that out. Practice tip: the tenant's bill of rights and information regarding a tenant's opportunity to purchase first right provided by the Office of Tenant and Landlord Affairs. Here's that form. Okay. Tenant and Landlord Affairs. So there are a lot of forms in Maryland that the state and county require, and some of the forms that you're having that are required to be in your packets are not MAR and GCAR forms. They are state or county forms. Okay. And what I was telling these guys before earlier is one of the big differences in Maryland is that the counties are allowed to have their own forms, and the associations can have their own forms that's not used elsewhere in the state. And in Virginia says you got to get that approved before you can use it. Dulles or Loudoun was the first one to try to release their own form because of the Dulles airport. They would need to disclose this, and they put it out there, and the state struck it down. Said, nice idea, but you are a county. You can't force them to do this. So this last year, the state said, okay, we're going to have this disclosure now. And so then that form was reopened, and now we have that as part of our disclosure packet. Okay. But this is the page of yeah, it was somewhere here. Oh, did it go somewhere? It switched the whole page. Okay, got it. So that is the new page there of the getting the right of refusal. Exclusive buyer tenant residential brokerage agreement, the buyer broker agreement. They've moved the compensation broker and intercompany agent paragraphs towards the beginning of the agreement. So that's when they say they've made some changes. That's all it is. But the buyer broker agreement from 2024 has us in a different spot than the one for 2025. Okay. So that's the difference on that form. post-settlement occupancy agreement, the term has been revised to replace the nominal consideration option for compensation with a flat fee option. Financing addendum, FHA VA conventional, have been revised to add a section for the buyer to disclose additional financing programs. It didn't have this before, and this is where some people would get wrapped around the axle, particularly listing agents, where in Virginia, it's called Virginia Housing, the VHDA. In Maryland, it's the MPP. And people would say, I'm doing FHA. Fine, you're doing FHA. But they wouldn't have a spot to say, oh, and by the way, my down payment's coming from this grant, because it was an FHA program. And now there's a place for you to disclose, hey, by the way, I'm getting all my money from a loan. Okay, that's what this is. On-site sewage disposal system. In essence, in Maryland, this is the well and septic, but that's what they call it, on-site sewage disposal system. So if you go to Maryland forms and you look for septic, you're not going to find it. So this is the whole thing about, it's kind of like an an England English versus American English. That's what you're doing when you look at Maryland and Virginia. How does Virginia say it? And then how does Maryland say it? So just keep that in mind. And if you can't find something, give me a call. I've probably found it somewhere. And you eventually, as you do more deals, you'll get it. Oh yeah, look for sewage, not septic. Okay. All right. Water yield test notice. The buyer may provide the inspection report and note deficiency to be corrected by the seller only if the test result states the water flow does not yield a minimum rate of 1 gallon per minute. So it's got to be 1 gallon a minute. You can't say I want more. All right. It's kind of like with radon. Now, radon, it says it's not satisfactory. If someone wants a 2.0 in radon, it may not be satisfactory. I'm not sure if the addendum allows them to get out if it's under 4.0 and just not lower than where they want it. And I think that is the threshold, isn't it? 4.0. Yeah. So if they get 3.9, they don't have a right to cancel. But here they're saying the minimum rate is 1 gallon per minute for your water flow, your water yield. And if it's not that, then you can bring it to them. If you're like 1.0 or 1.1, that's the minimum. You can't bring this to the seller to have it changed. Okay. Not necessarily. I've seen this where some communities have it, where they'll test it. I had one house, it was in Oxon Hill, and it was coming in low from the home inspection. We didn't have a test. And we had it looked at, and they just found out that at the street, it was not turned all the way up. But the seller was able, the tenant, the inspection company, which was Square One, they're the ones that picked up on this is a really low flow. And so when he had someone come out, he just realized that someone turned it down and didn't turn it all the way back up. Yeah.
Virginia, the water supply is 30 PSI.
Yeah. Water yield. Like I said.
And that would be for well too, right? That's
Yeah.
really where you would measure.
Right. But this is under the water yield test addendum. Okay. All right. And that's all the changes on these forms for 2025. I would submit in the Maryland section to go to 2024 just to update yourself on and remember the forms are statewide and local. You go to statewide and look at 2024. There was a whole bunch of changes here. Superfund site disclosure, we just don't really deal a lot with that. But the NPL Superfund was added to the addendum, was added to it. The water quality test addendum, information on that, release of deposit agreement, what that language means. Yeah. Well, yeah, let's look at this real quick. This was last year, but you may not have been aware of it if you haven't done a lot of deals this year. When the buyer terminates the contract pursuant to a contingency, anyone, if a buyer terminates a contract pursuant to this law, they may provide a written notice to the seller and the holder of the deposit requesting the full return. If the seller wants to protest the release, the seller must provide the holder of the deposit with a notarized written request for mediation within 10 days of the receipt of the buyer's request. So it can get, so this is not about they just disagree and everyone start arguing. Oh, you're going to challenge that? Boom. But it's got to be notarized. And they got to do it within 10 days of receiving that notice from the buyer that I want the deposit back. This is real. You know this happens. So as a selling agent, a listing agent, be aware this is the action they must take. They just can't say, we're not going to sign. They have to get it notarized that they don't want to release it, the seller. If the seller does not protest the release of the deposit, if they fail to provide the holder with a notarized written request, the holder of the deposit shall distribute it within 30 days. So they're not going to get it right away unless everyone signs off and we're good to go. But if there's this foot dragging going on, then the holder of it, which is usually your title company, I kind of like this because I think it keeps the seller from holding them hostage when they're trying to get out, when it's pretty clear what's going on. But if they really believe, hey, you did this wrong, you don't have a right to leave, they got to take these actions. But it also releases the deposit holder, which is usually a title company, could be the selling company. It holds them, they're not held hostage either with this money. They're like, man, I got 25 grand here. What am I supposed to do with it? They now have the ability to say, you didn't give me a notice within 10 days, notarized, gone.
Hey, Anthony, can you hear me?
10 calendar day.
Good question. 10 days. Yeah, it's 10 calendar days. Yeah. Yeah.
Anthony, can you hear me?
Oh, by the way, I'll note this. I had to look this up just the other day. Is their end of day is 12:59 p.m. Not 9 p.m.
11:59.
What did I say?
11.
Well, we could do 12. It's daylight saving time. No, 11:59. So it's not like your deadline is not midnight. Your deadline is 11:59. You do it midnight, and technically you are late because you're into the next day.
That's how we do.
Yeah. Okay. So that's Maryland. It's I'd say midnight, but it's not. It's a minute before midnight.
You have an addendum.
Yeah.
That says 9 p.m. or 2 p.m. or whatever.
Yeah.
We'll do addendum.
That's a good point. Yeah, you could say, hey, we'll have it delivered by 9 p.m. Yeah, you can do it. And remember, that is the whole thing about contracts. You can change things that are there as long as they're not required by the law. Like we can't change, hey, I'm not going to get a HOA packet. We can't change that. That's by law. Or I can change the HOA packet that I'm not going to use it to do anything, but I can't change the law that I can't receive it. I don't receive it, I can walk. I receive it, I don't like it, I don't do anything within 3 days, I can't walk. Okay. But I can say, I got the HOA packet, but I don't want to, I'm going to let you know I'm not going to do anything about it as a buyer. Okay. So yeah, you could change that and say, I want this delivered by 9 p.m. If you do, kind of make a big deal about it to the other agent so they're not taken by surprise. Say, hey, I'm changing this deadline to 9 p.m. All right, let's all go to bed. All right, at a decent hour. So that's the one thing. I think Virginia did that. Say, why are we staying up till midnight to see if they responded? Let's just cut it off at 9. All right.
Anthony. No.
And then this one, it requires exclusive right to sell. And then they just passed one. It requires a contract of sale to allow the buyer to test the water quality of the well. Okay. Whether it's a private or domestic water supply well. So what that means is you could have a public supply well and a private supply well. I sold a house a few years ago. This was Virginia, but it was a community well system. Warrenton. But this community were all on, and it was managed by the county, which was interesting. I kind of like that. Yeah. But that's what they're saying here. So the argument was whether, well, this was domestic water supply, so you can't test it. It's community. No, if it's either or, we get a chance to do that. Then you've got anything within a national priorities list Superfund site to include an addendum to the contract that includes the information on the MPL Superfund. So this is where, as a listing agent, you really need to know, are you close to a Superfund site? And that's why all these disclosures have to work together. So the seller, when they're listings, got to do this. And if they are, then they got to let the buyer know it and let them know you're within 1 mile of the Superfund site. Yeah. Superfund, I don't have it all completely there, but this was a bill that was passed several years ago that if if an ecological disaster happened, usually it's around places like chemicals, oil, and if that was a Superfund site where they had to take Superfunds and clean it up, the owner needs to know, or the buyer, it's within 1 mile of that. You got to let me know that so I can get out if I want to. Okay.
Nuclear waste is good.
That would be a good example. Yeah, nuclear waste.
People got love for that.
Yeah, in the 70s, that was a tough time. All these plants from the 40s, 50s, I don't know about 40s, but 50s, 60s, when all these chemicals and everything was coming about, they just weren't, I don't know that they didn't know, but maybe they didn't know. There's probably a hint that maybe I shouldn't dump this in the river. You know, but things were happening. And in the 70s, you had all this ecological stuff going on, and Superfund was one of them.
There's a lot of parts that are.
Yeah. I remember when I lived in North Carolina, we had it's now a National Guard facility, but they had done a big production here on top of a dump, and all the methane broke up. And one day, someone came and turned the light on. Whole facility just blew up. Yeah, right. That kind of stuff. Yeah. Then the condo resale notice. You got the requires a unit owner to provide a statement no later than 15 days prior to closing on their knowledge of the presence of asbestos in the unit and whether abatement has been performed. Now, this is kind of the same thing with lead-based paint. If they don't know, they don't know. But they do have to put something out there about asbestos. It's going to be for older properties. This is on the VA financing, the certificate of reasonable value on this financing addendum. They change it that the buyer has 5 days to either take no action, which will result in the contract becoming null and void, notify the seller they agree to move forward because with the contract at the contract price, negotiate it to the seller to lower the price. If they agree to it during the 5-day period, the covenants agrees to be bound to proceed with consummation. Okay, so what it's talking about is price didn't come in. What do we got to do? Well, now it's within 5 days. That's the main thing. And if they don't say anything, and that's another thing here. Notice when they if the buyer must notify in writing of their intention to do so before the 5 days expire, the contract becomes null and void. They have 5 days. If they take no action, okay, if they're quiet, and this is something about Maryland I don't like. If you're quiet, it's null and void. Okay, if you're quiet, you've agreed. And remember that I had one guy doing one of our agents. He was doing like, well, we got the deadline was last night at 9, so now I can decide whether to void or not. I said, no, that was the time you were supposed to void, before 9 p.m. And he didn't grasp that. Another one that we had in Maryland, well, they didn't get back to me. Then you just accepted everything.
That
Well,
works familiar to us.
wait.
That's what we do. We stay quiet in Florida. You
Yeah.
just come in that 10-day period.
Yeah. Yeah, you agreed since you said nothing.
Silence is consent.
Yeah, that's it. That's the way to say it. Silence is, I'm gonna write that down. Not silence is golden, silence is consent. And that's Maryland.
Okay, from Florida?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, so
I was just telling them, I'm thinking about moving down to Florida.
where about?
I don't know yet. I got a client, while I'm getting ready to list this house for sale.
Okay.
He's moving to Port St. Joe.
Yeah. So silence is consent. And that's very important in all of these contracts that you're working on. Okay. All right. General residential dwelling lease template. If the tenant pays the landlord directly for the cost of utilities, has anyone gotten something? Has anyone had a deal where the tenant's paying the landlord for for utilities? Anybody? I've never had that. I'm going to year number 31. Never had that. Yeah, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
lease.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. And but the security deposit in Maryland is 1 month's rent. Clarify the required amount of notice the landlord must provide to a tenant prior to the tenant vacating at the end of the lease term. Okay, so they've got some things. Unimproved land contract. Okay, I don't see right on them. Okay, so those are the changes from 24 and 25. And now let's get to a residential sales contract. I think everyone here is licensed, right, in Maryland, right? You got that. So remember, these forms don't automatically show up. You must be a member of MAR for MAR forms, GCAR for GCAR forms. GCAR is Montgomery County and DC. Okay. And so just keep that in mind. Then you may need to go into command and change your membership. If you're at MVAR, change it to GCAR. I don't know why, but I think I had to change it. Mine was GCAR, and suddenly all the forms started showing up in my library. So the thing is about this, why don't you know Anthony's broker? Because I did it one time 8 years ago. I'm sorry, guys. I don't do this every day, okay, on this. I knew you were going to ask that. But do you go in and command and get all the forms? You don't? You don't? You do.
Yeah. Where do you
So,
get your
okay.
forms from?
Where do you get your forms? You go to this site and get them? Oh, okay. Well, okay, you're covered then. Yeah. 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 Just in command this is not a command class, but in command, you have to hook up. What you're hooking up is your NERDS number. And then command and DocuSign are looking around, where are you a member? So we just decided we're going to be a West Virginia office. So I'm going to go and become a West Virginia broker. And now by joining the West Virginia whatever, we will have access to West Virginia forms. But what's happening is command and DocuSign are looking around with my NERDS number and saying, where are you? And pulls it in. Yeah. Okay. So there's not a box to click to get them. That's the thing. Yeah.
When are you leaving West Virginia?
When am I leaving to West Virginia? No, what happened is we saw that we gave up almost $3 million in transactions to West Virginia. And being the heart-loving and greedy people that we are, not greedy, but I'm like, man, that's a lot of activity. We shouldn't really be letting that go. And the agent's like, yeah, I'm fine to be here. Just, right now it's what's happening. So I'm going to get my broker license. It's almost like in a degree.
And for West Virginia?
For West Virginia, yeah. So wear my overalls and my flannel shirts. And
And I know, some of the commercial agents that I work with, they're Maryland, DC, Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Delaware.
yeah. Yeah. All right. So I do want to make sure I am recording here. Yeah. All right. We're in the residential contract. The good thing about this is really what I'm doing with this recording and this class is this is Maryland documents for Virginia agents. You already know what a date of offer is. You already know what a seller is and what a buyer. So I'm not going to go deep into what I would do in an NVAR class. Like this is where you go get the tax information. No, I'm not doing all that. I'm just going to point out the things that may be different in Maryland, which is why this is a 4-hour class. No, I'm just joking. But there is a lot of things different in Maryland than Virginia. And if you've done a few deals, then you know Virginia is the land of forms. All right. And let's fold as much as we can into the form. And Maryland is the island of Addenda. Okay. Really? Okay. Here's another addendum, right? Oh yeah. Here's another addendum. So that's kind of the difference between the two jurisdictions. Slowly we're becoming more like the same. That's kind of like in our yeah. Which Virginia's giving up its freedom. No, I'm just joking. But I do like a lot of things in Maryland that the way they have it, and I wish we had it that way. One in particular, which we'll come across, is there is no automatic extension of financing in Maryland. Either you fish or cut bait by your deadline, or you get an extension. I kind of like it. At first I didn't. And then I did a few deals. I'm like, hey, you know what? I kind of like this. And part of the reason I like it is it tells your buyer, you got to get the stuff done to get financed to get to settlement. And you talk to the lender, you got to get this completed to be financed by this date. And if not, you need an extension. So the whole thing of like, let's give them 7 days to get financing done because I'm going to prolong it till closing. You can't do that in Maryland. So those are some things that are different in Maryland that we don't have in Virginia. And these are the types of things I'm going to point out as a Virginia agent, how that is different for you in Maryland. So with that said, we will move along. Okay. So we got the property, state. So number 6 is the first place it's a little bit different. Paragraph 6. The property's been conveyed. Is it in fee simple or subject to an annual ground rent? Most of them are going to be it's in a fee simple. You don't. Most of the ground rent is like your mobile home parks. That's what this is talking about. And we have a checkbox for that in Virginia, but this is putting it out front. We do have the existing amount of write out the number and then write out in alpha what the amount is. $750,000 in long form and then $750,000 in numbers recorded among the land records of what city and county in Maryland. Okay. Yep. Condos. It does say fee simple, but that's what it is. So
Is that like a checkbox? You check it.
there are no check boxes here. They just got blanks.
Okay.
Yeah. The purchase price, the payment terms, delivered. It's got the place where who's holding the deposit. If you have a listing there, it's not unusual in Maryland for people to still let the buyer or broker hang on to the funds. So just keep that in mind that you may get contracts if you're listing of someone like, yeah, we're going to hold it Long and Foster. Like, what? Wait a minute. Because in Virginia, our practice has become let the title company hold on to it. Most of them are the title company, but it's not unusual to see a brokerage that has their own escrow fund and they want to hold on to the numbers. Okay. They do have additional deposit information here. Generally, most of them are using 8A. Here's the amount, who's going to hold on to it, and what does that mean?
Going back to this big part, what do I put in that line before it in?
A?
No, 6.
6. Oh, here, the property is being conveyed. You'll probably click in fee simple.
Oh, that's something, it's a click button.
Yeah, it's a blank.
There's nothing to write.
Right. X.
Okay.
Yeah, generally is what I see.
On, AB by way of. What would that?
Oh, that'd be like wire,
Oh.
certified funds.
Somebody's-
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point you're picking up there. You see, it's the same thing. It's just worded differently state to state. And this is the same if you do a VAR contract versus a NVAR contract versus a Tidewater contract versus Maryland and GCAR. The great thing about Maryland and GCAR is why I do like it. Everyone uses MAR. Okay. If they're not using GCAR, it's MAR. In Virginia, we have VAR. Then we have NVAR, we have CCAR, we have Richmond. So you can see in Maryland, in Virginia, it's like, well, which forms are you using? Versus Maryland, it's one of two. And then you got all these addenda that the counties have. That's kind of how they divide it up.
What's the difference between the estate and the purchase price there? I'm sorry, I must have missed that.
Estate is just what the property. That's what they're just calling the property.
Okay.
The property, this estate, it might be in a condo, it might be land, well, not land, but it might be a condo, single family townhouse. This estate, the property's been conveyed, boom, in fee simple or boom, subject to an annual ground rent, not now existing in the amount of boom. So if you were doing a place with ground rent, you would put in the amount here.
Okay.
Yeah, $800. Right. They're blank. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. If it's fee simple, you just put blank. Okay.
Real quick before we go past, finish up 6. I was thinking of city, county, like as both, and I've been putting both. Is that fine or is it more like city, more county?
I think it's you could put the city. I don't think they have the boroughs like we do. Like if here in Virginia, you'd say Fairfax City. And then you would say Herndon Fairfax. Okay, so there I think you would put, Oxon Hill / PG. And it's important because this is a state form, and I need to let you know which county, because this is a state form that covers all the counties. So that's what I would do. County's probably the safest way to go. It's in Prince George's County because I have the address up here. And I got city, county, and then what's the estate. Purchase price, payment terms. I think y'all understand that. This is my statement of where the payment terms are going to be, whether it's financing or cash. The payment is, the buyer has delivered, will deliver an initial deposit, and in the amount of X number of dollars. An additional deposit may be, probably don't have that, and all deposit will be held by ABC Corporation. If it's not held by a Maryland real estate broker, the party shall execute a separate written escrow agreement. All right, so this is a first example of what Maryland does. Oh, you're doing that? You got to have this addendum. Okay, so there's an escrow agreement that goes with this when you're using universal title as the holder of the money. And the buyer and seller signs it, and then when the escrow company gets it, they sign it and they send it back to the parties. So they hold on to that form until they receive the funds. Usually we're just used to just forwarding the receipt that the title company has given us. Maryland wants you to have this form signed off by the title company or whoever's holding it that I've received them. Okay. How's it to be? I usually see non-interest bearing account, but there also is an option, an interest bearing account. In absence of default, buyer shall accrue to the benefit of the buyer. So it means they put in $20,000. It may be, if it's accruing at 2% a year. I mean, you can see where, like, okay, really, you want $5.55 by the time we get done through all this? It's just the non-interesting to me is practically the non-interesting amount is the best thing.
You don't have to do anything there if it's not being held up. Right, that's only. The broker paragraphs.
Well, it's by whoever it's being held by.
Oh, anyway.
Yeah. So it's, because it's about where the check's being held. Then this is more instruction about if it's held by a broker, buyer hereby authorizes direct to hold the deposit without negotiation until the parties have executed and accepted this contract. Okay. This is just all information about the deposit. Not a whole lot of differences here than Virginia. Settlement, what's the date of settlement? Or sooner, if agreed to in writing. And then these are all the addenda that you could possibly have with a Maryland contract. So they have in here, even though it's not your client, you will still send the affiliated business disclosure notice. Okay? Because in Virginia, our clients sign it and no one sees it. In Maryland, they want everyone to see it. I have seen where the seller sends it back to me with their name signed on it too. I guess that's just the way that agent works it. But the disclosure is from broker to client. It's not, and I'm just letting the broker B know I have this ABA disclosure, but some agents are having their seller or buyer sign it. They're having the seller sign it and send it back to us. I guess they're just saying, let's just make sure everyone's is disclosed. Additional as-is provisions. This is the septic and well addendum. Is it a backup contract? Buyer's request for seller's compensation. Did you notice that commission request was not in the contract? It's on a request for seller's compensation. Now, remember, Maryland did not decouple commission. Okay? Maryland, not decoupled, meaning the brokerage can still pay.
Buyer's agent.
Yes. Okay. And so this is when you're going in, it's very important that you ask them, are you as a brokerage paying anything? Okay. Virginia decoupled. Okay. It's completely up for negotiation. Okay. So that's a big difference in here. Now in Virginia, we have not decoupled rental commission. Rental commission still comes through the brokerage in Virginia. And we have another agreement, an addendum that we use to let the tenant agent know this is what the buyer or the landlord is paying out. Okay.
We have a policy, let's say we had a listing in Maryland where are we okay taking it and then paying the other brokerage, or do we want it?
In Maryland?
Yeah, Maryland.
Yeah, we're okay with that.
We have the same thing for it, but our brokerage does.
It just means that at closing,
Yeah,
it's still going to get separated.
yeah.
I mean, where's the money going to go? The buyer's dumping all the money on the table. Hey, by the way, I'm getting 6% and I'm offering out 3%. That's my listing agreement. So the buyer agent in Maryland still has to have a buyer broker agreement. But I let them know, hey, I'm giving up 3%. Okay. And then this addendum, which we'll get into a little bit later, says, let's say that I'm getting 4 and I'm offering out 1. Then that addendum would say, besides the 1% that we're getting from the brokerage, we want an additional 2% from the seller. See, that's how they do it. And I heard a lot of people say, what is Maryland doing? It's like, why are you doing this? Because everyone else is pretty much decoupling it. No offense to my Maryland friends. Okay.
Right, I
But
mean,
anyway. Yeah.
Setting themselves up for a lawsuit down the road.
Well, it's just the way they decided to go with it, and it works in Maryland.
Okay.
So that's how that goes. So the negotiation takes on a different form and look than it does in Virginia. Okay. So as a Virginia agent, just notice you're looking for an addendum somewhere about the compensation. Cash appraisal contingency, condominium resale notice, conservation easement, disclosure of licensee status. This means that I'm related to someone or I'm buying or selling and I'm an agent. Disclosure inclusions. And this again, if you're looking for conveyances, that's where it is. Okay. We would say, where are the conveyances in Virginia? In Old England, Maryland, they say, where are your inclusions and exclusions, your leased items and your utilities? See, ours is in the contract. Theirs is on an addendum. I guess you could give this addendum and say, nothing. I'm taking it all. It's like, disclosure of information on lead-based paint. That's the lead-based paint. FERPTA is a separate addendum, not in the contract. Forest Conservation Act, Homeowner Association Notice, Kick-Out Clause Addendum, Local City Certification. So this is where the local city, county certifications, local city, county notices and disclosures. Like we have a disclosure form. The Maryland, okay, we have a disclosure form in Maryland. Here's my disclosures. And it gives you the opportunity for a disclosure and a disclaimer. If you're writing a PG County form, again, you go back to, we have PG County forms, all right? So you would just go to your library and pull down PG County. So, and PG County, I am in the Maryland Association of Realtors website where you find all the documents. Prince George's County has their disclosure form right there. Okay. So they have their own disclosure form. All right. So if you're using PG County, you're doing a contract in Prince George's County, they have a disclosure form. All these check boxes you can do to disclaim and then or disclose what you know, what you don't know. But this is the way that they've handled it in Prince George's County. Okay. For use with all residential sales contract in Prince George's County. So that's how that is done in that arena. Yeah.
There's so many addendums in Maryland. How come there's no like it?
That is a good question. What he's talking about is in Virginia, what are we used to? Sales contract addendum, big old white piece of paper. Maryland doesn't want you writing anything. That's pretty much what it is. That's why they have so many addenda. It's like, on your phone, we got an app for that. Maryland's like, we got an addendum for that. That's a really good question. And that's a high level understanding of the forms to say, oh, okay, I can't write something up and get everyone to sign off on it. They don't want you doing that in Maryland. Does that make sense? So that's why if you have I have all the chuckling in the room. It's like, sorry, Maryland folks, we just do it a little bit differently here. Where is it? Let's see it. Changed. Okay, that's not there. I thought it was change of terms. Maybe it's under terms. There we go. Sorry. Oh, you know what? That's not going to be on here. The change of terms is not going to be on here because it's not part of the contract. It's if you change something, there's another form you pick up in Maryland to change the forms. Okay, that's why I couldn't find
Is that like the place that where that one has specific things you can change?
specific things. Yeah.
That's I saw.
Change in terms addendum. So I'm going to pull this one up. So if you wanted to change something, this is what they let you do. And then down here in paragraph 6 is where you can do your free loading, your free spirited writing. Okay. So they just don't like to we're going to do this and this and this and this. They would rather, they don't have a blank addendum. And so this is where you get that done. The challenge you have is if you get into a situation, because I've written some addendums that are like this, what they would rather you do, and if you're not adept at doing this, go to David or an attorney and say, I need this to be this. And Maryland will do it. And they'll, and I know she points at me like, you'll do it. I'll do it. And if I'm not sure, I go to David. Does this look clean? And sometimes you can write something up, email David and me, and we'll both just say, yeah, I'll do this, or I'll give an edit, or David will say, no, I would say it this way. And then you cut and paste that into a Virginia addendum. In Maryland, that's a really good point. This is your change of terms. This is the sales contract addendum. That's what this is. Change in terms. Okay. Like I said, that's the Maryland versus the Virgin Queen way of doing it. Okay. So written application, purchase price, settlement date. These are the change of terms of the contract. Okay. So these are all the addendum that we'll be going through later this afternoon, because this is just paragraph 11. Okay. So let's keep on going. Electronic, you get that. This is the entire agreement. You get that. Computation of days. A day shall be measured from 12 a.m. to 11:59.59 p.m. This is their day. They stay up later than us. So, I mean, what did I heard a commercial or some guy on a video? Once you get in your 50s, 9 p.m. is the new 2 a.m. It's like, it's so true. Oh, 40s, 30s. It's like, okay. So that's the measurement of days, Eastern Coast time. The day shall begin on the day following the day upon. So the day you ratify, the day you sign something to agree is not the first day. The first day is the next day. Okay. Seller's responsibility. It's just the same things. Hey, keep making your payments, paying your taxes, make sure there's no permit violations. It's on you if you have a tree fall on it. Seller can negotiate new leases, is not to add on a new lease or renew an existing lease beyond the date. Don't say, well, let me do this for them. And that's a good point in paragraph 16 as a principle. Many times sellers think they're doing something nice for this buyer, and the buyer's like, why did you leave all this junk in the house? What's all this paint here? What's all this wood? Well, that's the wood flooring that I installed 20 years ago. I thought you might want that. Oh, I thought you might want those tools. I thought you'd like to have all those cleaning up. Get approval that that's what they want. That would be in the, somewhere in here. Again, you don't have an addendum. Maybe include inclusions and exclusions. Seller to leave all items underneath the deck for the purchaser. That's kind of where you would put that, all right? But this whole thing of like, don't make decisions for the buyer beyond the closing date. And when they just said, I just renewed the lease on the garbage tanks or the garbage cans, well, you just now lassoed in that buyer beyond settlement date when it was going to be done before then. Contract's not assignable unless everyone agrees to it. Section paragraphs and headings of section are for convenience and in no way define or limit the intent, rights, or obligations of the parties. Now, section 2, financing. Okay, you got all these you can choose from, and then there's an addenda for each one of these. Okay, there's a conventional finance addendum. You're going to pull that document up and write it up. You're going to do FHA financing, etc. You know, when are they going to get the financing application done by? And I just put like, I mean, if you've already done this application, the way we work is like, it's already done. So put 1 day. I'll do it within 1 day. If you're just writing up a contract because someone called you from an open house and then you might have to put 3 days. But they got to get it done within this time frame or they are in breach. All right.
Do we need to write out the word 3 and then?
Yeah, you do. Yeah. Very good point. In all the documents in Maryland, they want you to read it and then they want the numeric equal of that. Yeah. Yeah. So brush up on your spelling.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to really get it smaller for it to fit in there when you get to the big price thing and all.
Commercial contracts are like that.
Oh, yeah. Now, if a written financing commitment is not obtained within X days from the date of contract, if you have not delivered to the seller, here's my approval, the seller can cancel the contract. What is Virginia? Can he cancel the contract in Virginia? What's he do in Virginia on this? I have not received your note that you're approved. What's the Virginia say? Right. I'm testing your.
You as the listing agent on behalf of the seller, right? Yeah, you request it.
Yeah, you request it.
And then if you don't get it, then you say, you give them the option, like, okay, if you don't give it to me,
Yeah.
then,
Right.
yeah.
See, this is the difference. In Maryland, you're null and void. You didn't get it to me. Seller can do that. Virginia, they can't. Virginia is, here's my notice. You got 3 days to get null and void, or we move forward. That's Virginia. I've given you notice. You didn't get back to me in 3 days. So this addendum is now done. Otherwise, what's the addendum do? It keeps on marching toward, it's been extended. This is usually when they've said automatic extension in Virginia. And that point, silence is consent. You didn't get back to me. So obviously this addendum is fulfilled in Virginia and we're good to go. In Maryland, fish or cut bait. But if the seller does it, so seller at seller's election and upon written notice to buyer may declare the contract null and void and of no further legal effect. They may. Or buyer upon written notice to seller, which includes written evidence from the lender, may declare this contract null and void. I can't afford it. In either case, the deposit shall be dispersed in accordance with the deposit paragraph. If buyer has complied with all the buyer's obligations, including those with respect to applying for financing and seeking it, they shall provide the deposit shall be returned to the buyer.
But it's the opposite.
It's, what do you mean?
Opposite. Like, number 1, seller at seller's election upon written notice to buyer may declare this contract null and void. It's the opposite because on Virginia, it's like, you still write them. You still, seller still give written notice to the buyer, but the whole point there is like, if you don't respond, we're gonna move forward with the contract.
So I'm
But
the
if you
broker.
don't
Here's what
respond-
Mr. Broker would say. Look, you have a deadline. They did not declare it null and void. But that doesn't mean that you have, let's say it's the 15th, but that doesn't mean you have until the 20th to get out.
Yeah,
Okay? The argument would be, you didn't say anything, so the contingency's done. And now you're giving me this disclosure, because I didn't exercise one as the seller, you're now saying that you're out on the 20th. I would contend, no, your deadline to get it done was over on the 15th as a buyer. That would be my position as the broker. On the buyer side, I would say, well, send it in and see what they say. It's like, maybe they'll let you out. If the agent is not educated enough, and I've seen that happen, the agent doesn't understand this paragraph and suddenly say, hey, we didn't get our financing. Here's my letter. And the listing agent goes like, oh, okay. And doesn't go after the deposit because according to this, you get out after the 15th and you give me that letter, you can't qualify. You're already out of the contingency. Fine, see you later. I get your deposit because you didn't perform. You're leaving because you couldn't get the letter before the 15th. If you needed more time than before the 15th, you would have gotten an addendum, that pre-printed thing. Let's give me 5 more days. That's how this, so you don't get an automatic extension in Maryland. You have to keep getting an addendum that lets you extend it. Otherwise, at any time, the seller can say, I'm out of here. I'm cutting this bait and go get another buyer.
That more clear though. Ours in Florida, it says specifically, if you don't have it by this date, the finance contingency is considered now,
Done.
done, yeah, yeah.
It's expired.
Yeah,
expired.
is that what this is?
That's exactly what this is.
Oh.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Okay, yeah.
And in Virginia, I've seen some agents really get messed up because they thought, well, I thought no, you thought wrong. You had till the 15th. You didn't do it. If you didn't say anything by the 15th, this paragraph 20 is fulfilled. You no longer have your financing contingency. And then the buyer will come in and say, oops, I can't get it. I need to void, and say, too late. We'll void, but I'm getting your deposit. Okay. Yeah.
I like the automatic extension.
Mhm.
Virginia.
Yeah.
A lot of my database, I do clients. And lenders need 45, 60 days to close.
Yeah.
If the agent, they accept it, I tell them like, hey man, it's an automatic extension.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like it for my
We just
buyer.
have to wait for the lender.
Yeah. And then the buyer just needs to be ready to say, well, let's cut bait if they get a notice. But the notice from Virginia is, here's my notice to you to either get out, or we're good to go. And if you're not good to go, you got to get out or give them an extension and say, look, we just need 5 more days to get this wrapped up. Can you give me more time?
So Virginia, it's like a 3-day window
Mhm.
for the
Yeah.
get out.
The notice, that paragraph says you've got 3 days to void. That's what our notice is. It's like, hey, you got 3 days to void. And if you don't void in 3 days, this contingency's gone.
But that automatic extension is, you pick the automatic extension, if you pick the automatic expiration.
Yeah, it's like this.
It's like that.
Mhm.
Which, from the listing agent, that would be something like.
As a listing agent, I would love automatic expiration. That's much better as a listing agent. Because it gets that contingency out of the way. Yeah. So, and it's interesting that's the way it is. And Maryland seems to be more buyer friendly. And what's our thing? Caveat emptor, buyer beware. I make it sound like I'm a nice guy, but I'm going to take your deposit. It's like, so buyer responsibility, get on dime, make sure you're doing it. And this is where the argument will come when the buyer says, oh, I couldn't get my financing, and they try to get the deposit back. If the seller can say, you didn't do it in time enough, you didn't give all the information you're supposed to have, so you don't deserve the deposit. This is where the argument comes on in paragraph 21. Sale or settlement of lease or of other real estate. Neither this contract nor the granting is to be conditioned on that. You would have to have an addendum that says it is. Okay. They can get alternate financing. The buyer may also apply for alternate financing. It's the same thing as it is in Virginia. It can't increase the seller or exceed the time allowed to secure the deposit. But they can do that. Property and this is the inclusions exclusions paragraph. We have an addendum on that. Condition of property and possession. At settlement, seller will deliver possession of the property vacant, clear of trash, broom clean, and substantially the same condition as exists on the date of contract acceptance. Did you see that? We have 3 options in Virginia. Substantially the same condition based on date of contract, when it's accepted, date of home inspection, and other. Maryland, you don't have that. It's within. See, I think this is where Virginia agents get mixed up sometimes, is they're walking into Maryland and they've done so many Virginia contracts, they're just assuming it's the same thing, and they don't realize what's not there when they're filling out this contract for the first 1 or 2 times. And this is one of them. It's already pre-agreed this is what's going to happen. Okay. They got up to 5 days to do the final walkthrough. Inspection. If buyer and seller agree, they will be afforded the opportunity to have an inspection. And then you have to have an addenda. And when we get to that one, it's really a lot different than Virginia. Okay. You have time elements that are already lined up. You could cross them out and change those, but it's like 5-day elements. Yeah. It extends that thing out automatically to like, well, I've got 5 days to report, then you got 5 days to report back. That's 10. Then I've got 5 days to report back, and then we're done. So you got a 15-day window.
And even what is the decred document?
Yeah.
It's like buyer's requested, seller response.
Yeah.
Buyer's requested, seller response. It's like 2 pages of counter offers. Like,
And Virginia used to be that way. Yeah. And when they switched it to this, everything's done in 7 days, everyone was freaking out. Well, wait a minute. And the big freak was, I got it to the seller and they never got anything back to me. Now what? That's where but most agents have gotten good at it. And in Virginia, it's like, well, if they don't get back to you, then you're accepting it as is. If you don't want that, then we need to get out. Okay. And it's rare, but sometimes you'll get a seller that just doesn't get back to them, or they'll get back to you at like 6 p.m. on the final day.
you're scrambling.
And you're scrambling to agree or not agree.
Virginia can have multiple walkthroughs.
What's that?
Multiple walkthroughs
Yes.
within 7 days.
Yeah, within 7
I'll do
days.
like here.
Yeah. So now, paragraph 26, I think this is the first one. Yes. Paragraph 26 is the first place where you'll see a place for the buyer to initial the paragraph. So this is not a 11-page document with signatures at the end. They have to initial that they have read or agree with this paragraph. Okay. No, another just for water. You'll know this information in the listing documents. So if there's something that's been, what it is like a development will do they'll do a development, like 800 houses, and they will tag on to each property a separate bill that each homeowner pays until it's paid off over, I think it's 30 years. And so you may buy this property and there's still this assessment there that you will inherit as the buyer agent. It might be $400 a year, and it's usually paid up in December every year until it's paid off. So all the homeowners participate in paying off that deferred water and sewer assessment. Yeah. I've seen it as high as $410. There's probably some that are higher than that.
A lot of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, bam. They don't pay.
Yeah.
In Florida, they make it part of your property tax. So
Yeah.
you're gonna pay.
Yeah, Maryland is separate, and the county, I guess, is the one that's collecting that to pay off because we have what we call in Virginia, what do we call that? It's proffers. And the developers say, yeah, I'll install all this sewage and everything, and then they just tack it onto the price of the house. So in Virginia. Okay, again, water quality. And so buyer may waive the right to have the well tested for water quality. Are they waiving it or they're not waiving it? Agriculturally assessed property. Most of the properties you're doing in suburban Maryland do not involve this paragraph. But if there is, like you're buying a property that was agricultural and they're not having the taxes paid or it's a lower level and you're buying it and you're not going to farm it, there's taxes that have to be recapture taxes. Who's going to pay for it? Forest Conservation Program, is it part of that? There's the ground rent paragraph. In Virginia, we only have a couple of places where there's this mobile home parks. And just keep in mind, if there's a ground rent, always ask who's collecting that and do I have to apply with them to get qualified? Like it's like I'm thinking of the one in Centerville, Meadow Fields or whatever. You have to apply with the Meadowfield Association to get approved that you could afford the ground rent. And if you can't afford that, then your contract doesn't go through. Federal lead-based paint law. See, here's another initial. Buyer acknowledges I read this. Okay. So just make sure that all these spots have their initial block for them to sign.
And you only need the initial, if it's before 78 or the initial.
No, that they read it. It's a 2015 house. Did you read this? Yeah, good point. You know, renovation, repair, and painting of property. This is talking about if you rent it, if the house was renovated and it was a before 1978 house, I'm disclosing to you that we did that. And the buyer acknowledges that they read it. Maryland lead-based poisoning prevention program. Maryland has their own prevention program, and some houses are included in that, some aren't. Yeah. And did you read this?
Lead and paint, but there's no disclosure of lead and plumbing.
I know it's weird.
And we're
isn't it?
drinking water.
Yeah.
We're not eating the walls.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Weirdest thing.
The lead solder is like before 77,
Right.
50% lead.
So,
So, yeah, so.
Right.
We have all this disclosure document for paint.
Yeah.
How come we don't have water?
Right. And then in this paperwork, you're going to see these links. And these links are for the consumer to get an error message. But there's a Maryland Association has a property insurance basics, what you should know. It's available to do it. And if you want to give that to them, then you may want to look for that in Maryland, or just give them a referral to Patriot Insurance. That's our own partner. And what I like about Patriot is they're a brokerage. So they got like, here's my 10 providers. Which one do you want to choose from? Flood insurance premiums explains that. Flood insurance rate maps. By the way, the FEMA maps, just so everyone understands, all the FEMA maps are based on the county maps. So when they say the FEMA maps are about to be updated, it means that that county is updating their maps and they're passing it on to FEMA. So there's no special thing you're getting out of it being from the FEMA website, because the FEMA website gets it from the county. This is what I've been told and what I've experienced on the maps that I was looking for. We had a property where the back corner of the lot was in the floodplain, and so we're looking for it. And I'm like talking with the county. They said, well, you can go to FEMA, but it's really us. Like, really? He said, yeah, all of us counties, we do the flood maps and then we send them up to FEMA and then they post them up there. So that, in essence, that becomes the national repository of flood maps is FEMA, but they're getting it from the counties. And flood insurance does not have to kill a deal. My guy is like the back corner of his house. Like, I mean, talking about like this much is in the floodplain, but the whole back of his lot is in the floodplain. And you can see the river is like, I don't know, 500 yards away. So it's pretty, but you can see it way down behind him. His premium is like, I don't know, $120 a month. So it didn't kill the deal. But I did notice that all the houses, all of his neighbors, they're all one level houses because of that. Okay. Notice to buyer concerning the Chesapeake and Atlantic coastal bays critical area. They need to read that and understand it. Wetlands notice, this is really big in Virginia, excuse me, in Maryland. And also, this is where you will get a lot of, there we go. You'll get a lot of county forms that have information about the Chesapeake watershed and things such as that. There we go. Criminal activity and sexual offenders. This is the disclosure that it's up to the, I mean, it's interesting. In Virginia, we actually have a link in here for them to go investigate the registry, but they say it's available to you. Here you go, but there's no link here. Military installations in these counties, and it's disclosing that to them. Notice to the parties, no representations, that the brokers or employees make no representations with respect to what? All these things that are in this contract. No advising. I'm not here to advise you about all the issues of the property, the hazardous materials, the planned land use, the airport and aircraft notice. I'm not advising you on that. This is the lowering our liability paragraph. Buyer and seller each full responsible for selecting and compensating their respective vendors. Protection of homeowners in the Foreclosure Act notice. Information on that. Homestead property tax credit, property tax notice, 60-day appeal. I'm not going to read all this, but this is what the buyer would need to be reading. What is it I'm signing? And remember, they're signing documents to protect them for the next 30, 40 days during the transaction. But for the buyer, it has prolonging effects where I've got to know what I'm signing is signing me up to this homestead property tax credit. Maybe it's signing me up to the Foreclosure Act if this house was ever foreclosed on. Okay, those kind of things. Hey. Adjustments, you understand that. Settlement costs, you understand that. Transfer charges. Great, I got 2 minutes. She's going to do this great presentation. All right, transfer charges. Now, transfer fees, this is where it's a little expensive in, more expensive in Maryland than Virginia. They are paying a transfer fee of about 1%. I don't know exactly the numbers here, but they're usually always split 50-50. The blanks here are if you're going to not split it 50-50. Just understand that. Nothing goes in the blank if they're splitting it 50-50. Okay? I'll get a call. What goes in this blank? Are you splitting it 50-50? I guess so. What do you mean you guess so? Well, yeah, we are. Okay, then nothing goes in the blank. Because I'll see agents put in there 50-50. I was like, you don't do that. You don't need to do that, okay? It's already says you're going to do that. This is if you're going to do something different. Then the first time Maryland home buyer, this is the first time Maryland, they've owned property all over the country, but this is the first time they're buying in Maryland. Then they are a first-time Maryland home buyer, and there's a benefit to the seller. And what they're doing is they're saying the first-time Maryland home buyer's tax is reduced from 0.5% to 0.25%, and it's entirely underwritten by the seller. And that's the state transfer tax, not the local tax. Okay? Everyone get that? Good. Let's go. This is a confusing paragraph sometimes, and it's just that they need to understand there's going to be a tax there. And this is why in Maryland, it's important in any state, but specifically in Maryland, you need to have a buyer estimate closing cost statement. Okay. This is why I like to use Universal Titles bid, because they take into account all the taxes and they put it in there for you. Okay. You just got to tell them what's the tax, and then they'll let you know, here's what your buyer's going to pay. Here's what your seller's going to pay. Okay. All right. Listen up. You know FERPTA? Everyone understand FERPTA? Maryland has a SERPTA. Okay. It's the state level of the FERPTA. If you live in Virginia or DC or any other state in the union, and you're selling an investment property in Maryland, you are an alien home seller. Okay?
Could be an investment property, could be a second home.
Anything. If you're not living there and you're selling it, they are going to take money from you and hold it in trust until you prove to them you don't owe any taxes. Now, this last part, if seller may request the Maryland Comptroller to issue a certificate of full partial exemption, provided that such request is filed no later than 21 days prior to date of closing. Your seller is like, I had one I sold, they lived in Maryland, but he's military, owns a home in Maryland, lives in the home in Maryland, but he claims Florida as his home base, military. So he had to put in there 21 days prior to the date of closing, I'm a military, I live here, I don't owe you any taxes. And that's what they're looking for. Do you owe us any taxes? If you don't do that, they will withhold this. The first time I found out about this, I was sitting in on a Maryland closing for another agent who was out of town, and suddenly there's this 1.5% pull or whatever it is. It was thousands of dollars. And they said, what is this? And I go like, I don't know, attorney, what is this? And that's when I found out about the alien owner in that area, okay? All right. Rest of this is pretty much the same as it is in Virginia as far as what goes on. Breach of contract and dispute resolution. Mediation, we like that. Attorney's fees, loser pays. And then here's your signatures. If it's a first-time buyer, make sure you check this box. Okay? Also, in Maryland, there was something else missing. We're too late. I'm not going to say what it is. I'm going to tell you what it is. And it was that who you're going to contact for delivery. In Maryland, if you give the information to the agent, they have been delivered to. It's not to the seller or to the buyer or anything like that. Okay? All right. Okay, for those online, we're going to shift off to you got a buyer now what? Okay, good. And so, Miguel, I'm going to end this recording.